There are a lot of numbers and terminology that gets thrown around when discussing personal finance. And while it can all be very interesting, especially if you're a money nerd like me, not all of them are created equal. Some numbers and some topics are going to be a lot more important for you in your financial journey than others. Perhaps the most important of all of those numbers is your savings rate. Today, I'll discuss why. But before we get going, be sure to like this video if you haven't already, as it really does help out the channel a lot, and subscribe with notifications on for more money-related videos like this one every single week. And if you want to further support this channel, you can check out some of the links I've left in the description below, which includes a link to my Patreon page. This is the best way to show your support for this channel, and in addition to that, you can also get early access to new videos and exclusive content such as spreadsheets based off the ideas we discuss in these videos. The spreadsheets will allow you to play with your own numbers and see how big of a difference some of the ideas we discuss can make for your own personal financial situation. In a previous video on this channel, I went over the 7 factors that drive investing success. Those factors were your savings rate, your time horizon, your asset allocation, your investments returns, your investing related costs, taxes, and your own behavior as an investor. All of those factors obviously contribute to your financial success or failure. However, with the exception of your behavior as an investor, which obviously isn't a number, I'd argue that none of them are as important to focus on when it comes to planning out your financial future as your savings rate. There are many reasons why I believe that your savings rate matters as much, if not even more than, any other financial metric we regularly track throughout our journeys. I'm going to discuss 5 of them today. Relative to most other metrics we track, your savings rate is an efficient tool for financial progress, controllable and complementary, something that allows you to take full advantage of opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and it often forces financial growth by pushing you into favorable financial directions. When put together, I believe these traits put the savings rate in a class of its own, hence the title of the video. So, let's take a moment to break each of these reasons down individually. The first reason that your savings rate is one of, if not the, most important financial numbers on your journey to reaching financial independence is that it's an incredibly efficient tool for making financial progress. Granted, not everyone's going to be able to save 50 or 70% of their income. Doing that generally takes some combination of a very strong income or ridiculously good budgeting skills and financial discipline, but thankfully you don't have to go to those extremes to see significant benefits from increasing your savings rate. In fact, statistically speaking, the largest impacts come from those initial increases from small savings rates, say like 5%, to slightly larger savings rates, like 10%. Take a look at this chart to get an idea of what I mean. This chart showcases the time it would take, in years, for someone who started with no savings to become financially independent according to the 4% rule, which states that you need roughly 25 times your annual expenses put away in your nest egg to be considered financially independent. The chart assumes that the investor managed to earn a long-term average annualized return of 5% per year after adjusting for things like inflation and, if applicable, taxes. As you can see, under those assumptions, someone saving 5% of their income would be able to reach financial independence in roughly 66 years or so. If they managed to bump their savings rate up to 10%, it would only take them about 52 years to reach FI, so they'd cut a whopping 14 years off of their required working career. At a 15% savings rate, they'd save another 9 years. At 20%, an additional 6 years, and so on. There are 2 main reasons why increasing your savings rate has such a large impact on the time it takes for you to reach financial independence, or really any financial goal you may have for that matter. The first is that when you're saving more money, obviously your savings and the income and or appreciation you get from the investments you put the money into will increase at a faster rate. The second, which is particularly relevant to the goal of financial independence, is that you are proving you are capable of living on less income than you were before you decided to increase your savings rate. Assuming that those lowered lifestyle costs are not temporary due to some sort of circumstance, then that lowers the amount of money you theoretically need to have put away to generate enough income to get by whether you're working or not, which obviously makes it easier to reach financial independence quicker. The second reason that your savings rate is one of, if not the, most important financial numbers on your journey to reaching financial independence is that, relative to many other drivers of financial and investing success we discussed earlier, it's a reasonably controllable aspect of your financial picture. Most of us have some areas of our budget that we could take a closer look at and eventually make more efficient, or maybe eliminate altogether, thus allowing us to save more money. Sometimes this comes in the form of big changes, like different housing or transportation savings opportunities, like house hacking or downsizing in some way, looking for ways to make our place more energy efficient, carpooling from time to time, or even moving somewhere closer to work and then walking or biking to lower transportation costs. Other times it can come in the form of smaller changes, like the often cited, or criticized depending on what corner of the internet you happen to be looking at, elimination of daily lattes, or any other small but frequent purchases we may make. And even if it isn't something we'd be doing all the time, there are usually things in the budget that we could cut or postpone in order to temporarily boost our savings rates, such as delaying vacations, for instance. Compare that to things like tax brackets, or the expense ratios on the investments you hold, or your time horizon as an investor, or even the returns that your investments end up earning, and you can see how the savings rate, while not totally within our control, is at least easier for us to influence, for better or worse. Sure, we can control our tax burden to an extent by taking advantage of things like our tax-advantaged accounts, but the brackets themselves do not change. And yes, we can opt for lower cost index funds over the generally higher cost actively managed funds, but we can't usually do much about the costs that are being charged by those index funds. If the costs rose, we'd just kind of be stuck with that. And to an extent, the same is true for our investment returns. We can certainly choose to invest in a more aggressive way by holding assets that typically earn higher long-term returns, such as stocks, but we generally don't have much influence on the returns themselves. If stocks experience a bad decade like they did in the 2000s, there isn't a whole lot we can do about that but wait it out. Even if you decide to go with a more active investing approach, the realistic ceiling for long-term returns is probably a lot lower than you'd think. Warren Buffett is recognized as one of the most successful investors of our time, and according to his 2021 letter to the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway, since 1965, he's managed to earn an average annualized return of roughly 20% a year, which is obviously incredible, as it basically means he's doubling the return of the S&P 500 during that time. As you can imagine, someone earning those kind of returns would undoubtedly be capable of reaching financial independence pretty quickly. Here's an updated version of the chart from before, just to give you an idea. As you can see, the time it would take a Buffett-level investor to reach financial independence, even with a mere 5% savings rate, is well within reach for most people's working careers, presuming that they start investing early on. However, achieving the long-term returns that Buffett has is not a very realistic assumption to make for most individual investors. It's part of what makes Buffett so special. And when we compare the hypothetical results of a Buffett-level investor to that of someone who focuses on optimizing their budget and just tries to match the S&P 500 when it comes to investing returns, we can see that the net gain for the successful investor may not be as large as you'd think on the surface. According to Vicki Robin, author of the best-selling book, Your Money or Your Life, most people that she's known who have consciously decided to try and live a more frugal, financially efficient lifestyle have managed to lower their expenses by roughly 20 to 25%. If we assume that this is a reasonably attainable transformation for the average person who undergoes this type of lifestyle shift, then it becomes clear that the increase in your savings rate basically makes up for the difference between an investor who simply matches the market and an investor who manages to earn double the returns of the market like Buffett has. Now obviously, it would be ideal if we could increase our savings rate and earn market-beating returns like Buffett does, but I think we can all agree that for the average person, one is much more attainable than the other. So while there is an upper limit on the control we have over our savings rate, the fact that most of us can, to a reasonable extent, optimize our budgets and or find ways to increase our income, it's generally a more controllable aspect of our financial picture than most of the other primary drivers of wealth accumulation. A third reason why your savings rate is one of the most important financial numbers on your journey to reaching financial independence is that it allows you to take full advantage of opportunities that otherwise you might have missed out on. Perhaps the most obvious of these opportunities is being able to increase the amount of money you're funneling into your investments when the markets are down. Buying dip has long been a winning strategy for investors, and it's easy to see why. It can make a noticeable difference in your net worth if you do it consistently over an extended period of time. Take this as an example. If you had invested $500 a month into a simple S&P 500 index fund since the start of 2000, then by the start of 2022, you'd have a net worth of approximately $541,000, with about $132,000 of that being money that you invested out of your own pocket. However, had you invested an extra $500 a month, so $1,000 in total, whenever the markets were at least 10% below their all-time highs, your net worth would be approximately $843,000, with $183,500 coming out of your own pocket. Even if you had dialed back your investing during the times when the markets were within 10% of their previous highs, so as to eliminate the difference in our out-of-pocket investment over this 2-decade span and make the comparison a bit more apples to apples, you'd still be better off, with a net worth of approximately $690,500. Granted, the stock market did have a rough go of it in the 2000s, so there were more months when they were off their all-time highs by 10% or more than they were in some other decades. But we're also only looking at a 22-year window here, and we're still seeing a difference of nearly 150K, which is quite substantial. And that's just one potential area where having the ability to increase your savings rate could help. But obviously there are several other possible situations where it could be beneficial, as we've covered in other videos. The fourth reason why your savings rate is one of the most important financial numbers on your journey to reaching FI is that it's a complementary part of your financial reality. What I mean by this is, oftentimes when you increase your savings rate, you also tend to help yourself out in other areas financially. We just went over how boosting your savings rate when the markets are struggling can lead to superior wealth accumulation over time, even when the total amount you invest out of pocket is accounted for in the comparison. But depending on what you do with the additional free cash flow, there could be other benefits. One of them is lowering your tax burden. If you have more money to save each month and a tax advantage account to put it in, doing so can save you more money on your taxes either now or down the road when you start withdrawing money for retirement. In some cases, increasing your savings rate today can actually help you to increase it even further in the future. For example, if you temporarily cut costs to help yourself pay off debts, you'll increase your savings rate in the here and now, and give yourself the ability to increase it even more once those debt payments are gone. And then there is something to be said about the greater peace of mind a higher savings rate, and lower burn rate, can afford you in times of stress, whether that be a market meltdown, a job loss, or a medical emergency. Knowing that you have the wiggle room in your budget, or can make some, can help you keep a clear head and think more rationally about your next financial moves during those difficult times. The fifth reason that your savings rate is one of the most important financial numbers on your journey to reaching FI is that it often helps push you into favorable financial directions. When you get right down to it, in order to increase your savings rate, you either need to increase your income, lower your expenses, or do a bit of both. In the process of learning how to sustainably lower your expenses, you often pick up insights about yourself and what you really want from your finances. You learn what purchases get you more bang for your buck, so to speak, either in the literal sense of more products or services for the money, or experientially in the sense that you get more enjoyment out of some purchases than others. And so you start focusing more of your spending on those things. You may also learn how to DIY a bunch of stuff, which can be helpful long after your deliberate effort to learn how to lower your spending is finished. In the process of increasing your income, you often pick up more knowledge and skills, which, in addition to netting you higher wages, can also make it easier for you to find work, should you end up getting laid off at some point in the future. So, those are 5 reasons why the savings rate is one of, if not the, most important numbers to focus on throughout your financial journey. Not only is it an efficient tool for making financial progress, but it's a tool that you have a reasonable amount of control over. It allows you to better take advantage of financial opportunities that come up. It helps complement your other financial efforts, and it generally pushes you into favorable directions, financially and otherwise. But that'll do it for me today. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button if you haven't already, subscribe, and hit that bell next to my name so you'll be notified of all my future uploads. I generally upload every single Monday, and if you have a friend that would be interested in this kind of content, be sure to share it with them. Let's really get this information out there and start our own financial revolution.